Good morning, everybody. I think you can hear me. Awesome. Good, good. Okay, let's, oops. Oh, no. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. I hope you are safe and healthy at this time. And thanks for joining us today for day 7 of our coach development webinars. Today we'll be running the question and answer session immediately after our presentation, and we won't be having a webinar at 7 o'clock tonight. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask throughout the presentation or save until the end of the presentation during the question and answer session. Whatever you want to do, it's up to you. So today we'll be hearing from Steve Delaney with the topic of competition in practice and how to train under pressure. Steve is the head coach of the women's varsity program at Brock University, and last summer was the Team O Black boys head coach as well. So at this time, I'll hand over the mic to Steve. Steve, can you hear me?
Yep, I'm just in the process of sharing my screen here.
Awesome.
Everyone can see this, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate the introduction there. So yeah, I mean, obviously this is something that's talked about a lot is, can you actually have a legitimate competition in practice? I think, you need to understand that this is just stuff that we believe at Brock, and this is stuff that we do in our gym. It's not wrong, it's not right. It's just kind of our way of doing things. And I think there's a few, basic principles that we have to kind of understand in order to kind of buy into what's going on here. And I know some of the mathematicians out there will say that, a point is a point is a point, but, I can tell from experience, both, as a coach and as an athlete, that if you're taking a swing at, say, 24, 25 for the other team, it's a way different kind of physiological response and feeling that you have than it is at, say, 0-1 in the first set. So, we try to duplicate those situations in practice all the time, and it may be different for you and your program, that whether it be like an OVA team, an OUA team, or another league you might be playing in, because you might have athletes that are used to being in that situation, so they kind of handle it differently. So, for us at Brock, we had to try to duplicate some of these situations as much as we could in practice, because we really hadn't been in some of the situations that we've been in the past couple of years, myself as a coach as well. So, moving along with those basic principles, I think it's important that you kind of understand and agree with these things if you're looking to put more pressure, in competition on your athletes in practice. And the first one is, obviously, it's okay to apply pressure in practice to challenge your athletes. I think everybody believes in that. That's kind of like the job as a coach. This one's pretty important. The second one is no old school. Fear is not a good motivator. I say that because, when I grew up playing soccer, that's how we were motivated. And even, in club and somewhat in university, you were afraid of making an error. Otherwise you would get yelled at, ostracized, that type of thing. So I don't particularly prescribe to that. I don't think it's an effective way, especially when dealing with maybe a certain type of athlete that has a low confidence level, whether it be male or female. I think you're going to get more out of them if you get them to buy into what you're teaching and, positive reinforce, but still error detect with them. The pressure in practice should be greater than any match. So you make it harder for, athletes to get out of a drill, to get out of a situation that's difficult. And then obviously sometimes you're going to single someone out. I mean, back in my day, if I made an error or I let a ball drop, sometimes you're diving, sometimes you're running, sometimes, the coach is just literally like berating you in front of the other team in front of the rest of your teammates. And again, I don't know that that's the best way to do things. Some people subscribe to that. I do not. I will, however, do things with humor. Crack a joke. The standing joke in my gym is, if you let a ball drop or you miss one or you don't go for it, or I'll say something like, hey, my mom lives in Florida. She's 72 years of age, and I'm pretty sure she could have got that ball from there. You might want to get the next one. And chuckle, chuckle, they get the idea. Everyone has a little giggle, and we get back and focused and practice, right? The thing too that to understand here is that I don't know. I remember when I was coaching club, especially getting the athletes to focus for the entire period of time was an issue. So some of the drills that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on are designed to kind of engage the focus right from the get-go. And I know that some coaches out there don't like to take score all the time, but I view that as anytime you're not 100% focused and you're doing a rep of whatever the skill may be, you could potentially be wasting it because the athlete could be thinking about an exam they have, or a fight they have with their parents or a friend or something like that. So like in our gym, if our practice is 2 hours, we only really get 90 minutes of real practice time after we have like a team talk, a team warm up, and a cool down, right? So you get 90 minutes, then you have to add your water breaks in between. And, if you're stopping and pausing drills a lot, then you're getting even less than 90 minutes, of a 2-hour practice. So we need to make sure that we're getting as much as we can. And I believe that adding a score to it means that people pay more attention and they're not going to waste those reps. There's 2 times I think in our gym where we'll do, just kind of like, I don't want to call it going through the motions, but something that's not scored, or there's no success criteria outcome, whether it be technical, tactical, or a score outcome. That might be after we've done our active warm up, we might do maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes of like one-on-one pepper type situation. I'm not a big pepper fan. I'd rather the ball be going over the net, but that's kind of good to kind of just get a touch on the ball, simulate what you'd be doing in a game warm up, and maybe warming up your shoulder and that type of thing. But then we want to get the ball going over the net as quick as possible. And then it's also important to pay attention to what phase of the season you're in. Like for me, a lot of my kind of success criteria will be more technical based in preseason and in early season times. But then as we gear towards the end of the season, when it comes to crunch time, it might be more of a score outcome success criteria based situation. So one of the methods that I like to use as a focus tool, but also as a piece to add pressure, is called continued sequencing. That's not like a scientific term. I kind of just made it up. But the idea is that if you're completing things successfully in a row, obviously the athlete performing, if you're going for 10, performing at 8, 9, or 10 when you're close to achieving the goal is under a little bit more pressure. And I'll give you an example of some of the drills that we do later when I show you. But obviously, the idea is that you're completing it in a row, even if it's, again, a technical piece. It could be, we're really looking at holding our angle on the pass, and that's all we're focused on. Or it could be proper footwork to an attack, and that's what you're focused on. But you're doing it consecutively in a row so that you're remaining focused. And obviously, as you get closer to achieving that goal, there's more pressure on that situation. Okay. Some of the things we'll do is we'll do like 10 perfect passes in a 30-second window. And again, perfect passes can be, the skill performed correctly to a target. But again, it could also be the technical pieces that you're looking to accomplish, whatever they may be, whatever you teach in your gym. I'm sure everyone, that's, on this seminar has a wide variety of things that they teach. So there is no right or wrong. It's just whatever you believe in. We like to do, and a good example of this, especially in like, say, preseason and early season, beginning of the season, we'll do a rapid fire pass drill, which is over the net. It's 25 consecutive. We're not 25 per second. We're going for 25 good passes, but the last 3 need to be in a row. And we can add, again, a tactical piece to that. So if it goes to target, that's one thing. But if it goes to target and you don't call the ball, or you're crossing over your footwork instead of shuffling, or you're not holding your angle, to your pass, those can be key pieces that will allow the score to take place or to not take place. And then obviously, if you get to 22 and then you get to 23, those athletes that are going and having to do 23, 24, and 25, those are obviously a little bit higher under pressure, because if you don't, then you start back down at 22. And then we go from there. So I like that drill, because not only can I teach some technical aspects of what I want to see on a reception, but it also allows me to put a little bit of pressure at the end of the drill as we try to get out of it. We like to put something on the line a lot. And, I'm not big on punishments in practice, but you'll challenge, say, hey, team A versus team B for 10 burpees. Sometimes we do something really cool where it's like, okay, look, if you guys can complete this skill or this task or get the desired outcome, coaches will do 10 burpees. The team gets pretty excited about that. So you don't want to be that athlete that messes up that last, sequence so the coach doesn't have to do their burpees. So that's something that we do. We also do some things with, booster juice sometimes. We've done pizza as well for different types of drills. Creative scoring. So this is something that kind of really excites me because you can do a number of things. And some of the drills I'll show, I have a couple of videos that I'll show. It's really cool how you can use score as a way to add pressure and add competition, but also to keep the focus, right? So we like to have small and big points. So in some of our drills, we'll battle for the small points, and winning a certain number of small points will give you the opportunity to earn a big point. And the big point is actually what goes on the scoreboard. And then along with that, we'll have bonus points for a technical or tactical skill we're looking at working on. So some of the stuff that we've done is like a push wipe. It was really apparent to me that in our gym, we like to set the ball a little bit tighter out of system. But that puts you in a situation where maybe it's too tight sometimes. So to be able to navigate a push wipe and still score a point for your team, we were gonna say whether you're in a point scoring position or not, whether it's a big point or a little point, that would be a bonus point. So I mean, some of the times in actual matches, we'll have athletes that go up and make a push wipe, and then our whole bench will go two points because they want the extra point. So it's kind of a cool thing to see translate into your game. And it's reinforced by your athletes kind of celebrating it. Forcing the middle, sometimes we'll do that. Or we've even done stopping the middle. There's been times where we struggled to stop the middle. So we wanted to, focus on that. That could be a bonus point. And then a tactical aspect that you're looking to work on, whether it's how your setter's coming off the net, what your libero's posture is like in defense before making a dig. Maybe they're using a hand dig that they haven't been using, like maybe hand digs are worth a bonus point, something like that. You can be pretty creative with how you want to do that. And if you watch film of your tournaments and your matches, you can take a look at the stuff you need to work on. And I should preface this by I'm big on game situation type of training. So one of the ways to kind of implement more, of those things you're trying to get better at is to offer bonus points for them in your gameplay situations. So I have an example of these drills later on, but I'll just kind of explain to them. So one that we really like is from the Gold Medal Square platform. And let me preface this by saying, I don't buy into everything Gold Medal Squared. I really love their practice planning tool. I like the way they teach certain things. I love their concepts, but like everything else, I think you take a little bit of what you like from here and a little bit of what you like from there. And so when I do show you some Gold Medal Squared stuff afterwards, just note that I'm not part of the cult, if you will. I think there's a lot of valuable information that they put out, and I subscribe to some of it. So first strike is a drill where, if you can think about it, so basically you're wanting your A side or your offensive side to get 7 consecutive first ball side outs in a row, and they need to do that before the defending side gets 3 stops or transitions in a row. So non first ball side out opportunities, right? So what that does is obviously, again, it's hard to get 7 first ball side outs in a row. So you get to 6. Now the amount of pressure to get that 7th is there. And then on the other side, if you're at 2, there's lots of pressure there for you to get that 3rd one, right? So being in these situations, ideally, any good team doesn't want to give up, 3 points in a row or more, right? So and on the other side, if you can get siding out in a row, boom, 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 and you'll rotate through that. And I have a video later on that I'll show. And then another drill that I'll show as well as a hurricane is when you start at 18 points, and then if you make an error, you'll get a minus point, right? So now it's a little bit of work on mindfulness. If you're in a match that's tight, it's 18 all, you're coming down to the close of the set, and you don't want to be afraid, but you also need to know that if you make a silly error, that it's going to be a minus point, and +1 for their team and -1 for your team. So I have a video of that a little bit later on as well. Okay, setting this scenario. Now this is, it depends on how you communicate with your athletes. I like to do this sometimes where we can say, for example, for us going into a playoff game against York, we hadn't hosted a playoff game before. So we would get to a situation in practice where maybe, our starting side wasn't executing out of the drill, and I would stop and I'd say, okay, guys, like here we are. It is now, 14-13, and we're in the fifth set, and we need to side out to win the match and advance. So let's do that. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, they don't succeed, and you can see that there is the air kind of pull out of the gym because they feel like they've failed. But like, failing's okay, right? Because guess what? You get another ball, another chance, and away you go. So we're okay with failing as long as we learn from it. What I always say in my gym is, I'm okay with errors as long as you're 100% focused, and you're giving 100% effort, right? And this is especially effective after like failing to complete a few of those opportunities, right? So now the other team's kind of working their way back into the set. You stop the drill, you set the tone. And for me, I'm not a yeller in practice, but there definitely is a stern tone I'll use if there's something I don't like. I usually don't like to stop the drill for more than 5 to 8 seconds to do this type of thing. Unless of course the athletes have questions about it, but setting the scenario can be an effective tool. It gives you a little bit of visualization, like here we are. And then when you are successful in that practice situation, it is something that can be very uplifting for both sides of the court, to be honest, right? Because it's a team victory, even though it's one side against the other at that point. So this is something that I know it might be a little bit controversial for people, but when you take a look at some of the other alternatives, I kind of like this. And we have at times in practice, we'll do something called the error board. So I'll bring out a whiteboard, and we did this. I think we played a match this year where we had just way too many errors. I think it was like 57 or 67 errors. I think it was 57. And so, we talked about that after the match. We talked about why some of those errors would potentially be there. This was a road match. So I know that my team is obviously a lot better at home. I think a lot of teams are like that, but there is a certain amount of pressure that comes with playing at home too, especially if you're hosting a playoff game. But in this particular situation, we had way too many errors for our liking as a group. And so what we did is we put all the athletes' initials on the board, and then we would just do like a standard tick, like tick, 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 5 slash, and then do the next one, right? And it's important to understand that for us in this drill, getting blocked wasn't an error. So I didn't count that as an error, right? If you make a good swing and the other team makes a good block, then, that's a good play by the other team. So what we're really looking at is, you missed easy digs, shank passes, missed serves, net touches, lifts, doubles, etc. And you want to use sound and fair judgment. Like maybe if two athletes are going for the same ball and they collide, well, you're not really going to give an error to, both athletes. You maybe don't give one to one. Maybe you do. It's up to you guys in terms of what you think is fair and what is not. But what happens is, as the athletes start coming off the court for their water board to get some water, they'll take a look at that board, and you don't want to be that athlete that has those tallies stacking up, right? And it's relative, right? Because if you're a setter, maybe you're not making a lot of setting errors, so you should usually have a lower number of ticks. And if you're a left side hitter, you're hitting, you're playing D, you're serving, maybe those are athletes or positions where you might have a few more. Because like when we do a plus minus analysis at the end of our matches, we always say something like, hey, a libero that's maybe a -3 had a really good match, but a left side who is -3, well, they probably didn't have the best match, right? So you need to explain, if you want your athletes to buy in, which I think is important, how it all relates. Like a setter who's a positive means that they probably had a couple blocks and a couple aces, right? Maybe a couple dumps, right? So if you have a setter that at the end of a match is like a +5, that's probably a pretty good situation. So it helps them transition why we're talking about the error board, because at the end, you want to be scoring more points for your team than you are for the other team. We actually had this situation leading into our first playoff game. I had 3 athletes. We had our P2 spot that we were trying to figure out who we were going to play. And I told the athletes at the beginning of the week leading into our playoff game that, hey, it's out there for all 3 of you. The pressure is not going away. And that's important to understand, whether you're, whatever high performance program you're in, the pressure is never going away. So I said, look at, blocks are not going to be counted against you, but if you shank passes, miss serves, miss easy digs, or create other type of errors, we're going to track that. And I said, it's not going to be my deciding factor, but it's going to weigh into it. And so we had We had a match on Saturday, so we started this on Monday. And then, on Fridays, obviously an easier practice. So we changed it, but only in our gameplay drills did we actually do this. So, and we kept that, and it actually weighed into what we were doing moving into our very first playoff game. Okay. Another thing we like to do is called the warrior ending. And this isn't for me. There's been some great coaches out there that are at the club level that have, told me about this. So we actually like it a lot, and it does transition into games. So basically, to score the final points of any drill that you're doing in gameplay, you designate who your warrior is. And what'll happen is you say, okay, we're going to go perfect pass, middle attack. And so maybe it's, whatever the score is. If it's a regular set you're playing, maybe it's 24-21, and the other side needs to warrior out. So you call out who you're setting. Sometimes you let the other team choose who they're setting. And you might say, okay, it's got to be a perfect pass, and it's got to be a middle kill or a left side kill or a right side kill. And then that player knows the ball's coming to them. The other team knows the ball's coming to them. So it adds that pressure. It allows the other team to maybe come back. So now every contact that everybody makes is now just as important. So it really allows you to kind of add that little extra piece of pressure towards the end of a set. And then, we had an athlete where I was making them warrior all week long. And in one of our craziest matches of the season, we were down, I think it was 9-3 in the fifth set. We ended up coming back, and on our first swing to win the match, this athlete who'd been warriored out, I want to say 4 times that week, when sometimes it was successful, sometimes it wasn't, but had been under that pressure, got the kill for us first time and gave us the win of the match. I don't know. It's tough if you're a club team that doesn't have, say, 12 athletes, but I'm big on an A and B side. Starters versus non-starters, I think it creates healthy competition. We always flopped our setters back and forth on this. And, I would, if we had, say, one setter that was, in our starting role for most of the time during a water break, I would pull her aside and say, hey, you realize that, she's beaten you the last, 5 out of 8 sets, and she's playing on the B side without our starters, right? You need to figure out a way to get your team to win, and just that puts a little bit of pressure on your setter to kind of give them the thought of, okay, why are we not winning? Am I setting the wrong person? Are my set locations? When you talk about all this stuff, it's important to have that dialogue, but it's not a situation where you're demanding it. You're discussing it so that you can have again buy-in from your setter and your athletes into the process. The key thing too is, if you're going to do this, you have to be willing to take some of the other players who are performing well in practice and put them on the A side, right? You can't just have the A and B side stay the same the entire season, because then there really is no hierarchy in terms of working your way up that ladder. And then I don't know how often you guys would have one-on-ones with your athletes, but you also need to be prepared for your athlete to ask you, okay, what do I need to do to get to the other side, or why am I not there? And then you can use statistical data from matches. And if you keep stats in practice, like we do sometimes, you can specifically say, well, look at your errors. This is part of the reason why, or you're still struggling in serve receive or whatever, but it's good to have that data. We definitely did this moving into our playoff situation, intermittent serving. So basically, in between drills, you 3 or 4 players, you send them to the baseline, you pick a target on the court. We have a radar gun. We say, okay, you've got to serve it in, and you're going to get it over 61 kilometers per hour to target, whether it's a seam, whether it's a position on the court. The rest of the team is going to make lots of noise and chirp at you and say things, because we've been in gyms this year where that has happened. And we're going to, put pressure on. And if we don't do it, the entire group is going to do, a couple burpees or sit-ups. And we included coaches. And by the end of the year, our team manager, our coaches, and our therapists, our athletic therapists, were even doing the sit-ups or whatever it was. But we also celebrated it as a team when we actually made it through those pressure situations and made the serves to target. So basically every athlete had to do that. That was identified. So if it was 3 athletes, all 3 athletes had to serve in. If they served it in and it was not at 61 or above, we would give them another chance, right? But if they made a serving error, then they'd all have to start again. And every time there was an error, it added to the the group kind of like fitness that we would do afterwards. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over some things here. Sorry about this. Okay, so here is our a practice plan I've done up, and this is just, I did it for this call just to kind of discuss some of the drills that we did. So the first one we like to do is it's a butterfly. It's very simple, but we do this at the beginning of practice. We will either do this one or the other one I'll talk about. And the idea is we want us to focus from the get-go. So after we've done our active warm-up, we've done maybe about 2 minutes of one-on-one type of pepper situation. We go right into this. And I'll usually give them about a minute, minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes to kind of go through like the motions. But it's, you know, the server, we run it on two sides of the courts. The athletes stay on their side of the court. You know, you serve to the passer. The passer will pass to the setter. The setter will set the hitter who's just passed. They will hit at the defender. The defender will pop the ball up in there. They must call it up. The setter comes underneath and they will catch the ball. If we do that successfully, that would be one. Okay. So we would do that and go for 10 consecutive, you know, sequences without the ball hitting the ground. When you first try this in your gym, it will be a disaster. I remember the first time I tried it at Brock 2 years ago. I think it took 23 minutes to get out of the drill. We're now doing it in like 3 minutes. And sometimes it's really great when you have both sides of the court doing it. We let them continue until they stop. So if one side wins, sometimes we'll put something on the line, who's going to win, or who's going to get it first, who's going to get the 10 first. So it not only does it work on your ball control, it works on your bettering the ball, works on your focus, but also works under your performing under pressure, because again, sequences 8, 9, and 10 are close to the end, and nobody wants to be that player that messes up at that point, right? The second one we do a lot for warm up is breakout. The diagram really doesn't do it justice here, but if the coach enters the ball, a player plays it up in the air and then runs to the other side of the net, and they call what defensive position they go to. Then the other player on the side sets the other remaining player on the side. So after the player sets, then they run under, and then the last player hits the down ball. We do this without jumping. You'd be surprised how much pressure is on an athlete trying to make a down ball over the net, right? That is the most, I guess, stressful part of this drill. So what we'll do is we'll do that. We're going for 10 consecutive, passes over the net of the ball. So it's like dig, set, hit at your teammate, set back, hit at the next group. So then group 2 would come in here. And then after that, group 3 would come in. So we'll say something like, okay, if you do it first time, in first attempt, coaches will do 10 burpees. If you, where we've done like everyone gets booster juice if you do it first time, right? So you have the opportunity to win something. Again, you get to 9 and 10, and those are the ones that have the most pressure. Also, you have a situation where we've done it, okay, let's see what our record's going to be. I think by the end of it, we actually let them keep going, and they got to, I think 31 was a really, was the highest we got to. So anytime we beat the record, then we put something on the line, coaches burpees, or the entire team gets a booster juice or a donut or something like that. Depends on what you want to do. Okay. So then we have our, this is a drill we use a lot. It's a 3-ball drill where basically what that means is the coach is putting in 3 balls. And you can change how you want to put them in, but for our purposes here, let's say we're doing down ball to a setter, which gives our libero an opportunity to out of system set a lot. Maybe an out of system attack tossed by a coach just to anyone. Could be the setter, could be somewhere. So now you're working on your hitting out of system. And then a pursuit ball, like chase ball into the net, chase ball, go get it into the corner, bring it back, that type of thing. And then of those 3 balls, the winner of that, say, best 2 of those 3 small points gets the opportunity to side out for a big point. Okay. So if you now have won 2 out of the 3, you're now siding out for the big point, which again goes on the scoreboard. If you win all 3 of those, then now you're siding out for 2 points. And if you first ball side out, we'll give you another bonus point. So essentially, people say a point is worth a point is worth a point, but in this particular drill, you have an opportunity to side out for 4 points. So, and it could even be 5, because as we add the bonus points in, so a push wipe or a cover trans, transition, you can actually, score 5 if you're doing that in your side out opportunity. We do record the bonus points during the small point sequence as well. So again, you can pick your tactical piece that you're working on, force the middle, push wipe, cover transition, back row attack, whatever it might be. And you can add that. We'll pay games to 25 and we'll do that. And we'll, flop setters back and forth, play with the lineup and that type of thing. And sometimes we'll add a minus for any setting error, right? So that can be effective as well. Another drill we like to do is called serial killer. The idea behind this is that you're going to overload, and you want to be careful what type of what point in the season you're doing this in. Like if you're moving into playoffs or you're heavily into your competition phase of the season, it might not be something that you would do because you're overloading, a player. But what happens is a coach puts in a ball, setter sets a hitter attacks. If the hitter gets the kill, the ball goes back to that side of the court. The setter has to set that hitter again. So, it gets pretty crazy in the drill when maybe you have a long rally going on. Now your setter dumps. Well, now the setter has to dump the next ball, right? And then it changes possession over to the other team as soon as you don't score that point, or as soon as the other team scores the point. If you get a back row attack, then that's where the next ball is going. So it puts pressure on that athlete to have to continually find ways to score. It puts pressure on the other side to say, okay, hey, look, we know where this ball is going. We should be able to stop it or at least slow it down so we can transition it back. So that's a drill that we like to do, specifically kind of, mid-season and early season, just to kind of, to get things going and to get pet players in rhythm and to work on our setter and hitter relationships. Okay. Opposite volleyball is another one we like. And what that simply is just, we like to use the arrow board in this one because it's all side out. So you only score points when you're siding out. So it's just regular volleyball, but it's the opposite. So you're scoring points only when you're siding out. So, if you continue to side out, you side out in rotation 1, then you rotate again, and you rotate again, and you rotate again, until you go all the way through, and you set your score to be whatever you might want to do. We also, another one that I don't have here is a side out report card. So we'll take 30 balls, and we will track the amount of first ball side outs and your side out percentage in that period of time. We just do it with a scoreboard. Anytime you get a first ball side out, you also get a free ball. At the end, we come over before we get a drink, or as we get a drink, and we say, okay, look, we sided out for 15 out of the 30. That's 50%. We want to be a little bit better than that. Of those 15, 8 of them were first ball side outs. That's okay. We'd like it a little higher. And then here's how many free ball conversions we got. Here's the plays we ran, and we'll keep that kind of data so that we can have a little bit more impactful information at the end of it. Okay. So what I'll do now is, so I'll just explain these two drills here, and then I actually have video of them so you can kind of see what they look like. And then I'll shut up and stop talking because I'm sure you're tired of hearing me, and we can I can answer some questions. So first strike is that one I talked about. So basically, can you side out first ball 7 times before the other team gets 3 times in a row? So it's 7 times in a row versus 3 times in a row. You can add bonus points or stuff if you want. I find that this one's very hard. Your side, your offensive side or your A side will struggle to get 7 in a row. I don't care what level you're at. It's difficult. So make sure you let the players know that ahead of time. Because I think when we ran this drill, I'll say maybe a dozen times we did it, we actually had it work maybe, and this is like you get consecutive opportunities. So we run the drill and you're continually trying to do it. I think we only maybe had, call it out of like say 30, 35 attempts, maybe 7 times where they actually were able to do it. But it just keeps them focused, keeps them under pressure that entire time because it's hard. It's really hard to side out 7 in a row, first ball side out. Okay. And the second one, Hurricane, we started 18 all, and then we're basically doing a plus minus system. So if you score a natural point, great play, great, +1 for you. But if you score one and the other team makes an error where say they're hitting the net or out of bounds, it's a +1, -1 scenario. So if you can see my screen here, here's the first strike drill. Okay, and you're going to see it here, and it'll pop up and actually allow you to see what the scoring situation looks like. Now this is Baylor. They were one of the top NCAA teams all year long. I really like what their coach does in some of those and some of the practice drills that I've seen. So we'll just watch this for the end, and then we'll show you the other. Okay, so that was first strike. So this one's hurricane. So it has the rules here for you. So, 6-on-6, score starts at 18, play to 25, win by 2. Team A gets 3 balls in a row. And then again, you can play with, whatever type of ball you're putting in. But, in this particular drill, it's a serve from Team B, a free ball toss from a coach, and then a bounce ball, which is stimulating the first contact dig from another coach. Then Team B goes through the same sequence, right? Each rally is worth 1 point for the winning team. Errors are also a negative point for the losing team. Service error, attacking error, mindfulness error, effort error, right? I think effort errors are key. If you don't have to make your team completely stop practice and start doing dives all over the place, but if they lose a point on the scoreboard, I think it's just as impactful. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. And you stay in the same rotation the entire game of 25, so you really get an opportunity to work on your side out efficiency in that rotation, and you can pause and do some coaching pieces with your setter tactically, or your defense positionally, or what have you. I usually like to keep, sometimes I'll be in charge of, say, the defensive side, sometimes I'll be in charge of the offensive side, and then let the other coaches in my gym kind of run the other sides against it, and to identify different scenarios. So anyway, we'll play this one out too.
Pressure on errors, like we're still challenging to play free, but knowing that they are pretty costly in that. And that gives us all 3 phases. It gives us the serve receive part for the first ball side out. It gives us, some free ball transition if we want to work on some of our non-traditional sets. A little bit of a scramble, like how do you get your setter to the net on free balls? Is in our opposite, take it with our hands. Where are we going in there? and then the out of system, you're working, that transition, that important part of transition. So both teams are, how can we get big disruptive swings versus a well-formed block, and make sure the other side who's playing defense is putting up a well-formed block. So that'll, one team receive serve, they win the free ball toss, and you got a transition ball, and you go the other way. And first to 25 wins, and win by 2.
So before we open up to questions, I think it's important that everything that you're talking about as to why you're adding competition and you're adding the pressure into practice is you need to have a common goal. We set goals obviously personally and individually, but we set statements as a team. And we use those statements as to, we're going to accomplish this year, not this is our goal. The example I like to give is like Steve might want to have a Ferrari when he's 50, and that's a goal. But if I tell you, hey, I'm going to have a Ferrari at 50, I'm doing that. Now I have to back that up. And then it's easy to kind of help those action pieces and behavioral pieces to fall in line. And what this competition is, where people get uncomfortable in practice, because I have had athletes come and say, hey, look, the air board makes me feel nervous. And I said, good. Because, when you're at Guelph and there's a football player banging a frying pan in your ear as you're trying to serve, guess what? That's going to make you feel uncomfortable. So we're trying to recreate some of that. And I think if you don't clearly set out the, not only what your team mission is and what you're looking to accomplish, then, it's harder to get buy-in. Like everybody can say, oh, I want to win every game, but it's bigger than that. I think you need to explain it to your athletes as to why we're going to compete so hard in practice, especially if they've had a different coach before you. Usually, especially at the club level, you might be with your team for 1 year. You might be with your team for 2 years. Sometimes you're with them for longer, but getting the athletes to buy in is completely key. And if you don't manage the expectations and set your whys as to why we're doing things early on, I think you might have problems. So it's important to, in your initial kind of team meetings, to discuss that. So now I'm not sure, I'll open it up for questions. Lauren, how do we do that?
For sure. So I think the best way to go through this is you have the option to raise your hand, and then when you do that, I can unmute you, and then I think it would be best to verbally ask the questions as opposed to chat, although I think you do have some questions. Can you see the chat box there, Steve?
I can see it says chat too.
Okay, so if you open that, there's 2 questions there, and then if you want to answer those, I'll look for the raised hands after that.
Yeah, okay. So from Gilles Landry. Does this not lead to a fear of making errors when in practice environment? I want them to feel okay making them, but using them as learning tools. So that's an awesome question. And I'll tell you this. So this was a 2-year process for me. And in the beginning, in my first year coaching at Brock, I said, I want you guys to swing away. I don't want you to worry about errors at all. And then we were the number 2 error committing team on the attack in the OUA last year. But I needed that because I needed the athletes to learn themselves what balls they were capable of hitting and what balls they weren't. And I needed to see it for myself as well. Like, oh, this athlete has a bigger hitting window than the other. And then what I did this year is I said, okay, look, in certain situations, we want most of you to manage the ball, but you get the green light to swing away because I believe you have a better ability to do so. So I really say that it's okay to make errors as long as you're 100% focused and 100% learning from them and trying 100% when you're doing it. So if you do those 3 things, we talk about errors all the time. Errors aren't a bad thing. They're a learning opportunity. So no, I don't believe, as long as you handle it right, and talk about errors and let them know, hey, it's okay to make mistakes. I like what you did there. Let's try to not make the same mistake twice. One from Michael Ongley. Do you ever mix athletes in gameplay instead of? Yeah. Okay. So for sure, we definitely do situations where we just mix athletes up in gameplay, and usually that's going to be in the beginning of the season when you're just trying to kind of test and feel everybody out. But as we get further to playoff implications on the line, you're trying to smooth out your kind of your starters, so you have them perform together a little better and a little more, so that you can get better flow, better hitter setter connection with those athletes. But it's important to make sure that you're getting all your key players in. Like, maybe you're not putting on your 14 person roster, maybe players 12, 13, 14 aren't getting over to the A side very much, but I think it's important that everybody else does at least a little bit, because you may need to use them. So that's an important piece. Is a good question. Okay, so those are the 2 there. So I guess how you handle this now?
Okay, so I see some hands up here. So we'll start with Peter Wong. So I just unmuted you there, Peter. Feel free to chat.
Hey, can you hear me, Steve?
Yep.
How's it going?
Good.
We may or may not have coached club together in the past.
Right.
So what sort of things do you think transfer from the club and university environment? And maybe can you talk about your how you modified some things, or how things are similar from when you coach club to what you're doing now at university?
Well, I think the first thing to notice is that, in your club situation, you may have an athlete for 1 or 2 years, right? When you are coming to university, you're going to have an athlete for 4, maybe 5 years, hopefully, right? So I think they understand a little more that they need to buy in because it's something that's kind of bigger than them. I think that because of the age levels in club, athletes get really early success sometimes, and that can hinder them down the road. So, I know when I coached club, I took over a team that had won nationals, 2 years in a row before I'd coached them. So, when I walked into the gym, I saw something, in terms of practice effort that it didn't look to me like a championship team. So I think the good technical and tactical pieces that good club coaches teach, you can definitely see them. It's a reason why I think a lot of coaches spend a lot of times at the premier tournaments, because they're looking for athletes that have been playing at the top level, that are hopefully getting good coaching, and maybe they're TMO athletes as well. And so I find that the players that have the good habits, on the court and good technical pieces, they really transfer early on. But some of the things that might not transfer, or some of the stuff that might be missing, is that how to prepare for a match, properly. What do we do? What's acceptable? And it's important to manage, again, expectations of what you're asking for. Like, we had a situation this year where, we're coming to the end of our season, we're on the road, and we had some parents staying in our hotel that we were staying at. And then I come out, and our athletes are having lunch with their parents. And I was like, okay, this isn't club, and it's fine. If you come to me as an athlete and you say, hey, I want to go see my dad or my mom or my aunt or my uncle because we're in town for lunch, I may say yes or I may say no. But if you haven't done your rehab work, if you haven't gone to see the therapist and get rubbed out or worked on, then where are your priorities? And I think that's on me as a coach and on us as coaches to kind of set those expectations. And I think those expectations are not always transferred from club to university, if that makes any sense. So I think the technical pieces, I think you really find them transferring. I don't think there's enough how to prepare and what high performance really is when you come to the university level, because now you also have your schoolwork as well, but it's university level is a lot harder. And I find that the rookies really struggle with that transition from high school to university academically.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve.
From
Okay, next is Roger Nurse. I just unmuted you, so feel free to ask your question. Oh. I think I unmuted you.
You may have himself still muted.
Mm. Okay.
Sorry, Steve. I didn't click the button. Over the course of a season, how much would you put percentage-wise of your practice in these competitive drills, like from beginning of the season, mid-season to late season?
Yeah, so beginning of the season, it's probably a lot less because we're trying to dial in on some more technical pieces. I would say, the beginning of the season is probably, 60% technical. And then, the 40%, you're trying to take those technical pieces and put them into gameplay, because I believe for skill acquisition, that's the best way to do it. Like we've all done it. We've all broken down a skill. We do it in a block training situation. But my particular idea, well, it's not my idea, but my view is that we got to get it into gameplay as soon as we can so that we can, acquire the skill. Then, mid-season, we're probably going, I would say 60-40 the other way. Where we're doing maybe even 70-30 the other way. And then as we get into our championship phase or our competition phase of the season, where we're now really geared up, this is like after Christmas for us, and we're making our playoff push, we're probably doing, I would say 80% of our stuff in gameplay, and then maybe 20% in a lot less game type situation. And that's usually because of load. You can't play matches on a Saturday and Sunday and then go crazy gameplay throughout the week. So what I was doing is in the middle of the week, I was chopping up our court. We were doing it. We even did this at the end of the season as well. I'd chop up the court. We'd have our middles working on, block to attack transition, our reception players working on reception and proper reception technique, just getting those touches, and our setters working on, setting. And this is all being done on one court, so you had to chop it up in different pieces. So I think what I'm getting at is, as you get close to the end of the season, you're doing a lot more gameplay and a lot less of the kind of tutoring or teaching.
Oh, whoops. Up next is Jimmy L. Turk. I've unmuted you, Jimmy, so feel free to ask your question.
Awesome. Good morning, Steve.
Morning, Jimmy.
My question to you is, does this work? And I'm not asking that to challenge you. I'm just curious because I don't really do a lot of this stuff. We don't really keep score very often. We obviously haven't won yet. So I'm looking to make some changes, but like you said, you didn't do a ton of this stuff in your first year, but more in your second year. Did your hitting efficiency improve after 20 when you started to do more of the stuff? Is your serving efficiency better? Is there data to back up that the stuff actually works? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, it depends on what data you're looking at, but I will tell you that we went from being the second most hitting error team in the OUA to about the 12th. So that was a huge difference for us. And it made a difference. Does it work? I don't know. Right now, it appears to be working. But I mean, our coaching philosophy is something that's always evolving. So I can tell you that we had a much tougher schedule this year, but we won more games. And it's arguable that even towards the ends, once we had known that we had achieved a certain level, we were trying some things as well. So maybe our record isn't completely indicative of how well we could have done. But I definitely saw an increase in our hitting efficiency. I saw an increase in the amount of sets we won, and in our finishing in the season. So right now I would say yes. But again, I think you're right, Jimmy. I think it might be too small of a data size. But I will say I did do this when I was coaching club as well. And I think that, setting high expectations and then continuing to set those expectations in the drills that you employ in your practice is important. And, especially at the club level, I think it's really easy for players to be distracted because they're younger. So putting something on the line, putting the pressure on them in practice, I think it lets them focus better, understand that, hey, you're not going to win every time, but also where you're going at the post club level, there's a lot more pressure on the line, especially if you're going to the States or you're going to a program that is the coach's job is on the line, every season, right? I mean, I'm not sure it's the same in the OCAA or the CCAA or even the OUA here, but there's definitely a lot more pressure, and you're also competing against athletes that are older than you. So, you need to realize that it's not going to be as easy as it was in club.
Awesome. Thank you.
I got a question here.
Okay. Next, I have Natasha Spaulding.
Yep.
There you go. I've unmuted you, Natasha.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Hi, Steve.
Hi.
Awesome. We do a lot of scorekeeping stuff too. So I think that's really great. Really, really awesome presentation. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm just wondering about sort of the safety around this and how you create a safe environment and a safe feeling for the players, because pressure is so awesome. But I think something that I think is really tough is how do you build that pressure in a safe way where your athletes feel like psychologically safe to take those risks, and maybe even how do you debrief those situations where they do fail, and what does that look like, and how do you kind of build that trusting relationship?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. I think self-reflection is key. So after every match, or actually after every weekend, we do what's called a best and worst. And so the athlete will talk about the things they did on the weekend, the one thing they liked and the one thing they didn't like, whether it be on the court, how they prepped, and this isn't just the athletes that played, this is everybody, this is our red shirts, including our coaches. So I think one of the really powerful pieces is when the coach does it, and I can talk about, certain mistakes that I made, and they know that, hey, coach makes mistakes too. So it's okay to make mistakes because the coach is saying that, and I'm telling them, hey, it's okay to make these mistakes. So understand that. But you're going to make mistakes in a game. The outcome is still going to be the outcome. And if you make too many mistakes, you have a potential chance of losing your match. So the pressure isn't going away. One of the stories that comes to my mind is in my first season at Brock, we had an athlete that went in. And again, this is my green light season when everybody could swing away. And our season ended with a player attacking the ball into the net. And she felt really bad at the end of that. And I said, hey, listen, that's on me. That's not on you, because you did exactly what I asked you to do. You were aggressive. You swung for the ball. You swung to get the kill. I said, now we've learned from it, and maybe we'll make some changes next year, but don't feel bad about that because you did exactly what I asked you to. So as long as you're kind of genuine in terms of what you're saying, and you believe it, and you intimate that to the players, I think it's really big communication, and they have to believe that you believe in them, and they have to believe in what you're saying, and then you have to be okay with what you're saying, right? You can't say one thing but then really believe another. So I think to answer your question is just basically letting them know it's okay to make mistakes, let them know that you make mistakes too, and then keep that self-reflection piece really active.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is Len Cabales. I think you're unmuted there, Len. Go ahead.
Morning, Steve. How you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Hey, bud. I'm doing well, thanks. So a question about the cauldron piece that you do. So we have our programs have some similarities where we do subscribe to some elements of GMS. And I wanted to know, I guess I'm going to ask a two-part question. So what is the percentage difference in applying your concept of pressure during preseason and then mid-season. And I'm not going to get into the postseason because you just discussed the postseason part. And then the second part of that question is how much of cauldron numbers influence decisions on the roster sheet for you in terms of error management?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, so the first part, just tell me it again in terms of like preseason. You're looking for the percentage of preseason to midseason in terms of how much cauldron stuff we do.
Yeah.
Right. So to be clear, your definition of cauldron is individualized tracking of like stats, errors, or what have you, right? Or winning drills or not, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say that in the beginning, I would say the percentages probably will be about the same, maybe a little bit more on the lineup decision side, say mid-season. But what you're looking for is maybe different. So in the beginning of the season, again, it's more technical. So it might be, okay, look, I've got a passer who's really good at getting the ball to target, but it's always midline, which is something we don't want to see. Or maybe it's they're doing it with jump corrections and all touch on the ball because maybe they're a beach player. Whereas what I'm really looking for is that player who's going to create that proper angle and hold it to give themselves the proper feedback. So the outcome maybe isn't necessarily the location of the pass, but it's how they're technically completing the skill. Because you can jump correct the ball right up to the setter, which is great, but that's like something we want to see it as emergency move maybe 10% of the time. Now, as we go through, in the season, you're going to be using your practice data. We have statted passing, we have statted attacking, we've done all that. And usually like, it's fairly consistent with what you see in a match, depending on the structure of the drill, right? Like if you have a drill that's overloading the right side in this time, they might be more successful, they might be less successful. It just depends on that athlete and who they're competing against. But I would say as you get further on in the season, the data you gather from practice, as I mentioned with our error board leading up, is really kind of it's not the deciding factor, but it's definitely something as coaches that we talk about and we say, okay, look, because for most of the time with my coaching staff, we all agree on who should be on the court. But when there's a time where it's maybe different, obviously as a head coach, I get the final say. We really use that data and we talk about the practice of the week and their kind of body of work that they've done leading up to the game and discuss the metrics behind it. And I think your performance metrics in practice go up with the intensity and the importance, and the closer you get to the end of the season.
That's great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, next question from Nathan Groenveld. Go ahead, Nathan.
Uh-oh.
I think you're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Unfortunately, yes.
Steve, really love the presentation. I feel honored actually to go after all the coaches who have actually questioned all of your belief systems. I really actually wanted to get your thoughts on, you talked about starters versus non-starters in your gym. And I love the benefit of like, this is what you have to do to be able to earn a spot on side A. Would you talk a little bit about how you kind of balance that with the research and the benefits of mixing and having players improve from a developmental standpoint as well by having them play with different combinations and prepping for different lineups and things like that? So I'm just going to let you run with that, but thanks, Steve.
Yeah. So one of the obvious, kind of, I don't want to say negative, but one of the obvious concerns is that if you have your best players playing against your worst players all the time, are you really testing them? So you have to keep that in mind, right? And understand that, if you always have your best attackers attacking against your weakest blockers, then they're going to have success and it's not really going to make them better. So you do need to be cognizant of that. So we'll usually take 3 middles and rotate them through all 3 positions, right? We'll take, that's not my house, by the way.
No, it's mine. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. So then what we'll also do is, I'll take my libero, our defensive libero, because we use 2, and I'll always say have her digging and playing against, the starting side or top attackers. And again, like you do transition everybody through it, but you don't necessarily do, I don't anyway, don't do wholesale changes. Like I won't go, okay, we're now going to take you four and play with two starters. We're going to like intermingle it, maybe like similarities, like, you know, your L2s that might be similar. They're easy to switch over. You might take your starting right side and put them on the other side with your P1 so that they can, you know, battle back and forth and make it something that's really competitive. But at least for us, it got pretty competitive, really, with doing an actual A and B side. And then you can also switch the players around. You can also create differences in the score, right, which challenges it, right? So if you're going A side versus B side, you know, B side's up by 5 points, up by 8 points. They have to battle their way back to keep the challenge going. But yeah, you definitely want to be cognizant of the fact that you don't want your top hitters, you know, hitting against your weakest blockers all the time. So you do want to make sure that you are getting some of that in there. The question then becomes, you're giving up obviously some of the cohesion with your starting unit by doing that. So another thing we did, and I'm still young enough to do it, is I'll jump into the drill sometimes. Like we had specific match preps where we knew we were playing, say MAC, and we knew that their middles were big and they were running something a little bit higher in the middle. So for a weekend, you know, leading up to the games, I would hit meter balls against them, right? And block against them, right? Or have another assistant coach do that. So maybe bringing in another couple athletes that are maybe just graduated from your program or maybe are home from playing overseas, you know, throwing them in so that your athletes can then also get some good competition against them.
Cool. Thanks, Sue.
Welcome.
Okay, so at this moment, there's no other raised hands.
Cool.
Does anyone else have any questions for Steve while we're still on the webinar here? All right, it doesn't look like it. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for joining us this week. As always, the recording will be posted on our YouTube channel, which is OVA HP Videos, and on our Team Ontario website. Unfortunately, yesterday we had some technical issues, so the webinars were not recorded, unfortunately. But these ones will be up on our website and YouTube channel. So we'll see everyone tomorrow. Nate Gronveld will be here talking about training your block defense at 10 a.m. with the questions at 7 p.m. And thanks again, Steve. We really appreciated having you on today.
Thanks.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.